Part 13. Living in the White Mansion. When he returned to the wing, Xuan Huaifeng was still lying there, as if guessing that he would come back again. He deliberately leaned on the pillow and turned his back to the outside. Bai Xuelan walked over, sat down beside the bed, and laughed dumbly. "You look like a big girl who was forcibly robbed by me. A young master who has stayed abroad. Why are you so awkward?" "Well, you are willing to play with me. I'm very happy with the small temper." Xuan Huaifeng couldn't stand his words. And Fireland turned back, staring at him with black and white eyes, but he couldn't find enough words for a long time, so he was so angry that he could only hate it. He said angrily, "I have never seen someone more shameless than you." Bai Xuelan didn't think it was embarrassing, and smiled frivolously. "Of course I want a face. This face is thicker than ordinary people's face. And it can block the wind. If you don't believe me, touch it." He patted his cheek twice. "You touch it." Xuan Huaifeng had never met such a crazy and shameless person in his life. The more he scolded him, the more proud he became. His handsome face was flushed with anger. Every line was tense. He turned his head to the side, gritted his teeth and did not speak. Bai Xuelan laughed for a while, then took out a Hangzhou silk fan from the bedside cabinet, unfolded it, and said while playing, "Okay, I'll tell you. Don't play these hard-to-play tricks with me. If you think about it, outside it's the pond, there are still a few wells in the yard. You can follow concubine Jen's example and fall into trouble. As for me, although I'm heartless, I still want to be loyal. You can give me some face. I'll give you some face, okay?" Xuan Huaifeng hated his appearance the most. He didn't care about other people's rights at all. He turned his head stubbornly, not wanting to answer. Bai Xuelan didn't care whether he responded or not, and said to himself, "Since you agreed to be my adjutant and my subordinate, you must first set a few rules for you. First, let's talk about your superiors and subordinates. High and low, you are not allowed to call me Bai Xuelan. Bai Xuelan again. In the future, you will call me the chief. When addressing me, don't use you. I have to talk about you. Second, it is also very common. I pay you wages, and you have to listen to me. Third, the adjutant is a personal position. If you want to visit relatives or meet friends in the future, you must first ask me for instructions, otherwise I will send you something and can't find anyone." "What's the matter? Have you heard these 3 points?" He stopped and looked at Xuan Huaifeng's profile. After waiting for a while, he asked again, "Did you hear that?" As he spoke, he reached out and patted his handsome face lightly. Xuan Huaifeng was so angry that he couldn't speak, and when he noticed that something was shot, he turned his head and opened his mouth to bite. Bai Xuelan hurriedly pulled out his hand, but it was a little too late. His thumb hurt and was bitten by Xuan Huaifeng. Bai Xuelan frowned in pain and stood up involuntarily. Pinching Xuan Huaifeng's teeth with his other hand, "Let go." Xuan Huaifeng wanted to bite hard, but he couldn't fight his grip like a tiger's pliers. The teeth hurt, and had to be released. As soon as he loosened his upper and lower teeth, Bai Xuelan immediately pulled his thumb back, frowned and looked at it in pain. A few small blood marks were bitten on his thumb, and he couldn't help but raise his hand high. Stopped for a while in midair but did not fan down vigorously. "Take it hard." He found a white towel, wrapped his fingers, and sat back angrily. "It's a cat and a dog's ability to bite when you open your mouth. You have to treat yourself as a cat and a dog. Okay, I'll let you." Seeing Xuan Huaifeng again lie down and turned his back to him, Bai Xuelan's voice became colder and colder. "I have something to say first. I like to use cage collars when dealing with cats and dogs. Maybe like a trainer who occasionally uses a whip." No matter what he said, Xuan Huaifeng always lay there, as if he had not heard anything. Bai Xuelan said a few more threatening words, and Xuan Huaifeng seemed to be even more annoyed. Bai Xuelan originally thought that no matter what, he should always be peaceful on the first day, and never really cause a big problem. Seeing Xuan Huaifeng pulling the quilt and covering his head, for some reason, his suppressed anger suddenly surged, and suddenly his face was blue and purple, and he shouted, "You think you are still the commander's son, don't you?" He stretched out his hands and pulled Xuan Huaifeng, who was lying inward. "Huaifeng, if you dare to be so ignorant, I won't be polite." Xuan Huaifeng was already weak, but when he lifted him like this, his body seemed to fall apart, and his lower body throbbed. With a look of pain on his face, he stared at Bai Xuelan and asked loudly, "When did you lift me up?" "Oh, what happened last night must be your lift. Thank you so much." Being stared at by him like this, even the bones were soft, and the ashen face gradually regained its color, and slowly, a smile appeared. He looked at Xuan Huaifeng tenderly, put down the force on his chin, snorted embarrassedly, and said in a low voice, "I'm playing with you. Why does it really look like you're going to quarrel with me? Are you going to fight me if you haven't recovered yet?" His erratic temper, which has always been the most fearful and helpless in Xuan Huaifeng, could only snort disdainfully. Bai Xuelan said again, "Look, my hand was bitten by you, and it bleeds. How should I say, I have suffered a big loss. And you are still not enough?" Xuan Huaifeng really didn't know how to deal with this invincible guy. He simply said nothing and pinned his gaze to a spot on the wall. Bai Xuelan coaxed him into a smile and said, "Young Master Xuan, you can say something to your face. If you don't speak, I will kiss you." Xuan Huaifeng was startled, and his eyes fell on his face again. Bai Xuelan smiled as if he had succeeded. "You look at me like this, I can't help it." He lowered his head. Xuan Huaifeng hurriedly turned his face to one side. But unfortunately, he was suppressed by Bai Xuelan, and he couldn't hide anywhere. He swung his face to the side, and Bai Xuelan's lips chased him after lips together. The hot, unfamiliar breath pierced into his mouth. Xuan Huaifeng was furious and plucked Bai Xuelan's eyes and nose with his hands, but Bai Xuelan avoided it, grabbed his right wrist, but it wasn't enough. So he grabbed his left wrist and pressed it on top of his head. In this way, it is more convenient. Use one hand to grasp Xuan Huaifeng's two wrists and press, while the other hand gets under the clothes and gently rubs along the abdominal muscle line. Xuan Huaifeng became more and more passive, no matter which way he turned his face. He couldn't get rid of Bai Xuelan's pursuit. The jaw had been pried open long ago, and the soft and hard tongue was licking and sweeping in it. He could not wait to bite it off in one bite. Once the jaw was opened, Bai Xuelan took the opportunity to go deeper, and pried at the innermost as if to reach the throat. The unusually crisp and itchy sensation caused goosebumps all over my body. Xuan Huaifeng couldn't help but want to cough, but he couldn't cough it out, so he was gasping for breath. He really had no choice but to lift his leg and kick Bai Xuelan. However, this posture is not easy to kick the man above, and with one leg, the pain in the injured area last night made his eyes glisten. Instead, Bai Xuelan took the opportunity and stuck his body between his legs, laughed and teased, "I opened my legs, what's the matter?" He lowered his head and kissed deeply again. Xuan Huaifeng couldn't beat it, couldn't kick it, and was kissed until his head swelled up, the frustration, anger, humiliation in his heart, which couldn't be described in any words. And in an instant, his obsidian-like eyes froze layers of damp mist. This made Bai Xuelan realize again, and laughed hatefully and joked, "Don't cry, if you cry, I will really treat you as a woman." As he said, he moved his hand and touched the nipples under his clothes, circling back and forth. Although Xuan Huaifeng and Lin Qijun have known each other for many years, they are almost platonic in nature, and their bodies are very green. Last night in the paralysis, he was not sober. But now he is absolutely sober, and the feeling is even more unbearable. With a slight tug at the nipple, Xuan Huaifeng made a woo, gasping for breath, his body trembling violently. Bai Xuelan stopped kissing him, pulled his head back a little distance, and showed him a very ambiguous smile. Xuan Huaifeng's cheeks suddenly flushed. He knew that he was trying his best to resist. But his heart was suddenly filled with shame, and he seemed to have done something very shameful. This kind of strong and terrifying consciousness made him unable to raise his head even in front of Bai Xuelan. Xuan Huaifeng no longer stared at Bai Xuelan with hatred. His thick eyelashes drooped down and trembled violently. Bai Xuelan asked softly, "What's wrong with you? Are you shy?" Xuan Huaifeng immediately took a breath and whispered, "You don't want to do this?" Bai Xuelan asked knowingly, "Why not?" Xuan Huaifeng said nothing, seeing that his snow-white teeth were a little exposed. Bai Xuelan almost bit his lower lip like a flower petal to bleed, took out his hand from his clothes, stroked his chin, and asked very softly, "I don't do anything else, just a little boy. Can I kiss you, little one?" Xuan Huaifeng never raised his beautiful eyes, and was so silent that Bai Xuelan almost thought he would not speak, and he said coldly, "It's not you who has the final say now. If I say yes or no, what's the difference?" Bai Xuelan didn't argue with him, but smiled softly at him. "Okay, if you say there's no difference, it's no difference." This time, it was like a different person. There was no intention of kissing at all, and the tongue was useless, and it was so well behaved that it was really just lips to lips, like a dragonfly, kissing very tenderly. Xuan Huaifeng hung his long eyelashes and remained silent, letting him do whatever he wanted. After Bai Xuelan finished kissing, Xuan Huaifeng slowly raised his eyelids. The eyes of the two met in mid-air, and Bai Xuelan suddenly froze again. Xuan Huaifeng looked at him for a long time before asking in a low voice, "In your heart, are you planning to play me like an actor?" Bai Xuelan said, "It depends on what you mean." Xuan Huaifeng asked, "What do you mean?" "I don't know. What are you thinking?" Bai Xuelan smiled. Xuan Huaifeng asked, "What are you laughing at?" Bai Xuelan said with a smile, "I have laughed at Hordong for 30 years, and Horshi for 30 years. Today, it's finally your turn to guess what I'm thinking." Huaifeng was completely silent. The heart-wrenching eyes slowly drooped down again, and the body was stiff and motionless. If it weren't for the slight ups and downs of the chest and breathing, it would be like a handsome statue. Bai Xuelan finally waited until Xuan Huaifeng had such a serious private conversation with himself. But he felt a little regretful that he had blocked the road all of a sudden and was thinking about how to come up with a way to bring the topic back without a trace. Just as he was about to speak, there was a knock on the door. Bai Xuelan had to give up temporarily, got up from Xuan Huaifeng, and asked the other side, "What's the matter?" When the guest's name was reported, Bai Xuelan heard this from outside and knew that it was not an ordinary guest, so he walked over to open the door, took a few steps to the corridor, and then asked the servant, "Which guest?" The servant bowed halfway and said in a low voice, "It's Director Nian. He called many times today. According to your instructions, he answered that you were not there. And he didn't know where you were. He seemed to have something. He was in a hurry to ask you for instructions. Now he is rushing to the mansion again, and he'll see you again and again, I think. I'll let you know after all." Bai Xuelan smiled playfully. "I guess he should come too. Very good. Invite him to the study, I'll see him there." After dismissing the servant, he was not in a hurry to go to the study to see Nian Liangfu, but went around to the window of the wing and looked inside quietly. Xuan Huaifeng actually didn't lie down any longer. He found a corner of the bed and sat with his hands on his knees. Bai Xuelan watched for a while, but Xuan Huaifeng's posture didn't change at all. His eyes were wide open, and he seemed to be fascinated by his thoughts. Bai Xuelan knew that Xuan Huaifeng must be racking his brains to escape from his clutches, so he couldn't help but laugh. He hid behind the window and watched for more than 10 minutes. He didn't understand why he was so patient. He began to enjoy this trick of stealing, suddenly thinking of Nian Liangfu. It was enough to hang him in the study. Only then did he reluctantly withdraw his gaze on Xuan Huaifeng, and he walked towards the study. Nian Liangfu waited in the side hall for a long time, and finally waited for Bai Xuelan. Seeing Bai Xuelan stepping through the door, he quickly stood up, and called out respectfully, "Chief." Bai Xuelan gave a soft, sat down comfortably on the sofa, and took a look at Nian Liangfu. "Director Nian. What's your official business?" "Chief." Bai Xuelan didn't ask Nian Liangfu to sit, so Nian Liangfu could only stand. He is also an old civil servant. Knowing how his boss likes his subordinates, he calmly said with a little sincerity, "There is one thing that is really important. I need to ask the chief for instructions." Bai Xuelan leaned his head on the back of the sofa and closed resting his eyes. He said, "Well, let's hear it." Yesterday, the commander gave Liangfu an urgent task to stop and detain 2 smuggled trucks from Guangdong. Liangfu did not dare to ignore it. He personally led a group of people to ambush outside the city and detained all the people and vehicles. The commander warned Liangfu, "These 2 cars may be involved in smuggling of morphine and heroin, so we can't leak the news." According to the command of the chief, the prisoners are secretly locked in the small cells of the anti-smuggling prison, and they are not allowed to see anyone or make calls to the outside world. When Nian Liangfu said this, he stopped for a while and quietly glanced at Bai Xuelan. Seeing that Bai Xuelan was still closing his eyes and resting, he didn't mean to ask any questions at all. So he could only continue to say like a one-man show, "These things are all done according to the command of the chief, and the colleagues in the department are very cautious. I originally planned to wait. The case was clearly clarified, and the gangsters behind the scenes were caught in one fell swoop." Sitting up straight. "You arrested Qijun?" Nian Liangfu was already a little nervous, but now he is even more uneasy, and he murmured. "He also said that he is the chief's classmate." "Of course it's my classmate." Bai Xuelan stopped him, his tone a little anxious. "Your wife's brother, Huaifeng, and he are also acquaintances. Don't you know him? It looks a bit familiar, but the commander-in-chief has ordered this highest-level official business. The situation of smugglers is complicated, and no matter what special circumstances they encounter, confidentiality is always the first priority. So, you locked up Qijun?" "Yes." Nian Liangfu bowed his head with some guilt. "Nonsense." Bai Xuelan slapped the armrest of the sofa and stood up. Since Nian Liangfu met Bai Xuelan, it was the first time that he saw him angry with him. He was so scared that his heart almost stopped, and he stood there like a fool. "How did you become the director? I asked you to arrest a few smugglers. You'd better arrest my old classmate. What are you doing for food?" Nian Liangfu's cold sweat broke out. The subordinate is based on the license plate number, and it is unavoidable, if the information is so accurate every time. "What do I want you to do as an inspection department? As the director, you don't even have the ability to analyze and verify this point. You can arrest people when you see them, and you can't tell right from black and white." Bai Xuelan walked back and forth in the study, sternly reprimanding Nian Liangfu. "Thank you, I brought it up by myself. Daxin Yangxing is a serious businessman, and you were caught in prison for no reason, making such a big mess. I'm embarrassed. Where's the person? Are you released? You come to me and apologize solemnly." "Yes, the subordinate will release him immediately." What? It's still closed? Bai Xuelan stopped suddenly and turned to face Nian Liangfu, almost roaring. Nian Liangfu, is there something wrong with your brain? Since people have revealed their identity, why didn't they release them immediately? The official business was not decisive enough. And it was too cautious. The chief said that no matter what kind of special circumstances it is necessary to keep secrets, so as not to surprise people. So the subordinates thought they should ask the chief for instructions first, and made many calls, but the mansion's clerk said, "Shut up. The responsibility is the mansion's clerk again?" Bai Xuelan shouted at him unceremoniously, "What kind of director are you? You can't even compare to a clerk. I'm really blind. Pick Wanxuan to pick you out as a baby. You look like a man, but when you do things, you become a bitch. The situation is clear, but you can't have the ability to make decisions on the spot. Let it go first?" Nian Liangfu is scared. He shivered, didn't dare to say anything, just kept his head down and admitted his mistake. Yes. Yes, it is. This subordinate is stupid. And the subordinate handled it improperly. Enough. The color softened a little, walked to the sofa, sat down again, looked at Nian Liangfu, sighed and said, "Liangfu, don't blame me for scolding you. You are really inappropriate in this matter." Nian Liangfu's face is as white as a dead man, and his head is nodding like a chicken eating rice. Liangfu is wrong. Liangfu failed the chief's cultivation. Please forgive the chief. Bai Xuelan smiled coldly. In the end, we are all people from customs. I didn't forgive you. It's not a big deal. But, he said a little more, this matter has a very bad impact on our customs reputation. Qijun didn't forgive you. It's a big problem. Yes, the commander taught me. This subordinate. Nian Liangfu said. The subordinate immediately released him and sincerely apologized. Bai Xuelan, you are too naive. Da Xin Yangxing is not an ordinary businessman. There are several others. What about a wealthy businessman? With Qijun's temperament as a young master, he was thrown into prison for one night. And I'm afraid it won't be useful to apologize on the basis of your district chief's face. Nian Liangfu asked hesitantly, what does the chief mean? Bai Xuelan sighed again as if helpless, shook his head and said, you've stabbed a lot, what can I do? I'll have to help you clean it up. Well, you immediately release young Master Lin. Bring it to me, and I will say a few good words on your behalf. I hope he will give me a little face, and don't make things worse. Let the Prime Minister know about this. And I can't keep you. Nian Liangfu's nose feeling sour was grateful. He bowed deeply to Bai Xuelan. Chief, you are really a kindness to Liangfu. Bai Xuelan waved his hand. Don't say any unnecessary words. Hurry up and do things. Let's go. Nian Liangfu hurriedly ran to the customs prison as if being chased by an evil tiger, and Bai Xuelan ordered coffee in the study. Drinking it warmly and waiting. In less than an hour, Nian Liangfu invited Lin Qijun over. Lin Qijun spent the night in prison. The collar and cuffs of his white shirt were a little dirty. And after being startled and frightened, he was very haggard, with bloodshot eyes. As soon as he entered the door, Bai Xuelan stood up, walked quickly to the door, called out, Qijun, took his hands, looked up and down, and said, you scared me to death, have you been wronged? This thing is really uncomfortable. How did you smuggle, and you were also checked in? Why are you in the truck? Lin Qijun was still a little frightened and was led by Bai Xuelan to sit down on the sofa, and the servant brought hot tea for him. He took 2 sips in his hand. And then gradually calmed down and said, if you ask me, I am also completely confused. Those 2 trucks belong to us, and they were all French goods, from Guangdong. It was shipped from the old shop. Because 2 of them were relatively expensive, I went to pick them up outside the city. I don't know why. But they were caught by your customs. Bai Xuelan waved his hands angrily. Misunderstanding, misunderstanding. I am really popular with these men. It will be short-lived. In the government, the bureaucracy is heavy, and it is not enough for outsiders. There is nothing I can do. He said sternly. However, I will never forgive those who make you wrong. The first one is the inspection and punishment. The person, I have given the director a severe training just now. I really don't know how to do things. Knowing that you have revealed your identity. If you don't let people go immediately, you still delay and delay. If I hadn't known the news, I'm afraid he would have locked you up for a few more nights. Saying that, he glared at Nian Liangfu at the door of the room. Nian Liangfu had already apologized countlessly to Lin Qijun in the car that came all the way. And he didn't dare to sit down when he entered the study. He stood near the door with a guilty attitude and listened carefully to what they said. Seeing that Bai Xuelan brought the topic to himself, Nian Liangfu immediately came over, bowed to Lin Qijun again, and said humbly, Mr. Lin, the grievance you have suffered this time is really reckless, damn it, damn it. Although Lin Qijun was rich, he knew that officials should not be offended. Seeing the director of the inspection department apologizing so lowly, he was very vigilant, and quickly stood up, holding Nian Liangfu in both hands, and said seriously, the director Nian, don't do this. You are loyal to the country and fight against smuggling. You are a role model. The country needs this kind of pillar. I am a little wrong. He looked at Bai Xuelan and thanked him. Thanks to you this time, I know I owe you a favor. Bai Xuelan smiled and shook his head. You and I are old friends. It's too outrageous to say such things. I'll blame it. With a gesture of devotion to the long conversation, he asked Lin Qijun, would you like to call home first? I didn't go back all night and there was no news. I'm afraid they will be worried. Lin Qijun thought about it, shook his head and said, let my mother know. I'm afraid she was frightened. So I changed my clothes and went back, just like I stayed in a hotel for one night. I will tell the driver not to say it. Please help me keep this a secret. Bai Xuelan applauded. He praised. What a dutiful son. That's fine. It's okay to cover things up, and the customs won't be too embarrassing. I can thank you very much. I have your clothes here, you can take a shower and put them on. And I'll send a car to take you back. By the way, why don't you make another phone call and tell Aunt Ling that you stayed here late last night and took a night's rest, so that she won't suspect that you bumped into someone bad outside. Lin Qijun said, thank you so much. Hearing what Bai Xuelan said at the end, he couldn't help but smile again. Your words always tempt people to think badly. I spent a night outside, so why did I run into bad people? Bai Xuelan mysteriously raised the corners of his lips. I heard that Aunt Ling is very strict with making friends outside. Lin Qijun smiled and said nothing. There was silence in the study for a while. Later, Lin Qijun seemed to remember something and said, by the way, didn't you mean that you asked Huaifeng to meet at the mansion yesterday? I originally wanted to come here to see if there was anything I could help, but I got caught up in this incident. Is he here? What's going on? Bai Xuelan said lightly, what else can I do? Alas, Huaifeng has been in trouble lately. Lin Qijun also sighed. I think he has suffered a lot in the past year. He has suffered a lot of setbacks. All of us, friends, should try our best to help him. Bai Xuelan nodded. It's no wonder he was depressed and was dismissed from school not long ago. Lin Qijun said, when it comes to work, I helped him find one. He reached into his pocket, took out a small letter-like piece of paper, unfolded it, and let Bai Xuelan read the text on it, and said expectantly, although he's not a manager of a foreign bank, Huaifeng is not that picky either. I think he's willing to take the position of deputy manager. After 2 or 3 months, I'll promote him to be the manager again. After a month, it is time for my mother to go back to Guangdong. Bai Xuelan turned his face over, read it with great interest, and patted Lin Qijun on the shoulder with a smile. Qijun, we really thought of something. Hey, you have such a good position, why didn't you take it out earlier? Said that Huaifeng lacked a job. And I told him last night, asking him to be a little wronged and be my adjutant, and he agreed. I couldn't let him take office yesterday, so he will resign from my job today. Right? Lin Qijun, as if being slapped in the face, it took a long time before he squeezed out a stiff smile. Sure enough. I thought of a piece. With a wry smile, he crumpled the employment letter that he had worked so hard to get into a ball of wastepaper and put it back in the pocket. After sitting for a while, Lin Qijun stood up and said, I have to go home to see my mother, and I will sit down soon. Bai Xuelan also stood up. I asked the servant to find you suitable clothes. Well, do you want it? See Huaifeng. He lives in the mansion now. Living in the mansion? Lin Qijun just turned around, stopped when he heard the words, turned around in surprise, glanced at Bai Xuelan, and said clearly, Oh. He is your adjutant, and naturally lives in the mansion. Have you seen each other? Lin Qijun's face darkened. After thinking for a long time, he shook his head and said, In the future. I'll take care of the affairs here first. Since I'm here with you, there is always a chance to meet. Bai Xuelan said, It's up to you. Ringing the bell, he called the servant and asked him to lead Lin Qijun inside, pick a suit of suitable size and put it on. When Lin Qijun left, Bai Xuelan rang the bell again and called the butler over. As if he had accomplished something to celebrate, he tapped his palms happily in the air, raised his head to think for a moment, and instructed to say, You can get a good bottle of red wine and 2 glasses and bring them to my bedroom. The butler agreed and turned around to do it. Bai Xuelan suddenly stopped him again, thought about it, and revised the order. No red wine, let's just vodka, it's a pleasure to drink.